Can we put that question back up on the board here?
If you can, thank you.
If I can. Seven one. Yes, the Board of County Commissioners currently draws the lines right now for the residency districts and would continue to do so under 7.1.
And that's all by state law. Okay. Members, let me just inquire here and see what would be your pleasure. I have a number of citizens that have indicated that they wish to speak on this issue. We can have the members talk, or we can have the citizens talk, or we want to hear from them and then come back to us, and whatever you would prefer. Okay? All right. Is that agreeable to everyone? Okay, without objection, though. And I know after the professors talk, some of you may have left, and also some, I guess not the ones here have left, but some of you may not wish to speak anymore either. But I'll call the names of the cards that I've got here, and we'll.
Mr. Chair, 3 minutes or 5?
Thank you very much, Mr. Brinkman. Mr. Brinkman's going to be helping again, and we appreciate so much him standing there. 3 minutes would be correct. We'd ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes so that we can have everyone speak and also then get to the actual question here shortly. So, Ron Thornton, you are our first person. Is Ron? Come forward. Thank you, Ron. Come up and introduce yourself again. I know you've spoken to us before, and appreciate you being here
My name
tonight.
is Ron Thornton. I thank you very much for the opportunity. And I'm one of those guys that wears a straw hat. I drive a tractor, and I wear a suit. So I haven't worn bib overalls since I was about 8. Okay. Also, I think I'm the gentleman or the person that mentioned commensurate services for taxes. And I don't apologize for that, because that's about the only measure I have for determining whether or not I'm getting what I'll call adequate representation. And I recognize all the other variables that can be put on the table by each of you or all of us, and that's okay. I think the bottom line, as far as I'm concerned, is that regardless of how you want to define or classify what we presently have, it's still a major mess. And last night, when we talked about the tax issues, the fire assessment issue was a clear example of how what I'll call convoluted and just totally, from a private citizen point of view, just absolutely almost impossible to understand the rationale that went into a decision like that. And I have a degree in mathematics, so I understand how calculations are made. And that was just appalling. One more example. About 2 years ago, I sat in this room and I watched county residents literally beg this county commission to pave about 8 or 10 miles of unpaved county-maintained roads. And it was, again, it was appalling. And it didn't really matter. They finally agreed to do it. But this was after the gas tax was passed, et cetera, et cetera. So regardless of how you slice it, and I honestly can't say, and as the professor says, I don't think any of us know whether a single-member district would fix it. But I can tell you right now that I'm going to be on the streets one way or the other trying to change what we have in terms of the elected officials. Now, in terms of, it was mentioned, I believe, Professor Little, that you've mentioned something about if you take the present pie-shaped district distribution and apply the new census data to it, would it make any difference in terms of whether or not single-member districts would help in the representation as we've defined it or tried to? Well, I sent you a proposal with a preliminary analysis that showed clearly, in my mind, that the Gainesville bias on the voting in the 2006 and 2008 gives the candidate a 10% advantage over the district vote. And that is so, I mean, if it was 1 or 2%, and I didn't do the statistics because I didn't have enough time or the data. But to me, that shows clearly that take the pie, however it works out, that would be a representative single-member district that would pass muster and give each of us the opportunity to not be in the situation that we're in right now. Now,
Thornton, if you can begin to conclude your comments.
okay. The thing that bothers me as much as anything else is the fact that this county commission has not paid attention to economic development in the pure sense. And I've been involved in that for 30 years, helping small businesses get started, essentially all high technology, which is our base here. And an example was a few years ago, I worked with an entrepreneur that wanted to do internet, and the county commission, this was wireless internet, and the county commission told me, not the commission, the county staff said, we don't want this kind of business, private sector involved in this kind of business.
We thank
And so, you folks have a big decision. I think all we're asking is that give the voters a chance, the opportunity to make this decision. There's enough evidence that has been presented to you that I don't understand why that is even an issue. That's my request.
We thank you very much for your comments, and I'm sure the board here recognizes that last night there was a meeting here, and I can tell you because I had staff here past midnight, so I know some of you were here all night also, and so we appreciate that.
I was here.
You were here, John was here, okay. Bob Sarles. Bob, Mr. Sarles, come forward and, if you will, introduce yourself to us and make your comments. And again, we would encourage you to watch the 3-minute there. That way we can get everybody in. Thank
I
you, sir.
certainly will do that. Thank you. My name's Bob Sarles, and I was here last night. I'm here for the single idea that I would like to see any change that we can make to improve representation. I mean, I write to county commissioners, and I never get a response. Last night is the first time I've seen those people actually hear. You know, you can listen, but you don't hear it. And I finally saw them understand when Mr. Johnson got up over there and talked about those poor people that couldn't afford anything, much less, an increase in their assessment. So we just need some county commissioners that care about us, that represent us. And I admire you all because I know what a hard job you've had to do this. And after the wonderful presentation that Mr. Wald made, I would have to conclude my comments by saying anybody who isn't confused isn't well informed, because you have a task on your hands. But if you think this will help us, I wish you'd go ahead and pass it, or at least let us vote on it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Sarles. Appreciate that. Bruce Nelson. Mr. Nelson.
Bruce Nelson, 40 years, Alachua County. Who's going to fall asleep first, John, you or me?
I'm ready to go, man.
I will tell this commission that last night I have a lot of different clothes. My suits don't fit anymore. I would have wore a diaper, Professor, okay, if it would have made the county commission listen to us last night. I'd have stood here in Pampers, okay. My concerns are simple. I have some questions about single-member district, and I got some reasons I would love to see them. My questions are that you can buy a single-member district just like you can buy city elections at large. What's the protection against a special interest? I don't care if it's realty or construction or whatever, providing candidates within that single-member district, making it impossible for a guy like me who actually gets out, knocks on doors, go to the restaurant, talk to my neighbors, used to talk to people that come in my business. I pick candidates every year. I'm probably as purely nonpartisan. I'm a strange bird. I pick people on their qualifications. I lean conservative. Okay, but that's not the total deciding issue. I want to be able to have somebody that, here's my biggest thing, economic development. Most people within the central core of Gainesville believe that government is where you receive your living. A lot of people in the outlying areas believe that the economy is driven by private enterprise, the people that take risk and create stores, hardware stores, small manufacturing, things of that nature, and that creates growth in their outlying communities. Everybody cannot work for government. And I tried to tell the county commission last night, when you pass a regressive fire assessment, you cause businesses to close, you cause unemployment, and you drop off on sales taxes, you drop off on tangible taxes. Like they say, they lost the Oaks Mall. I was standing in the middle of Jonesville amidst millions of dollars of brand-new fire retardant construction, talking on the phone with Commissioner Pinkerton. I said, you didn't lose the sales tax from the mall. You didn't lose the tangible taxes from the mall. You know, you still have income from the mall, and it was replaced by new construction. So the funds are there. But I want to be able to work my heart out for a commissioner that I believe, okay, will understand private enterprise, what drives employment outside of government. I'm not knocking government employment, but everybody can't do it. You can't have all them benefits. Somebody has to create a wealth somewhere else to support that government. And so that's the biggest thing I see with the try to increase the grassroots availability in some of the outlying and smaller communities and rural areas where you can actually get out and work hard for a candidate that you believe understands that. And every commission for a number of years says the county commission becomes a retirement place for the city commission. And every one of them, there's very few have ever functioned in private enterprise and understand risk-taking, understand the daily chores, understand what high taxes do to development, and so forth. And so that's why I see the benefit of a single-member district. I also see that it could be more easily polluted by money. Thank you very much.
We appreciate you coming tonight.
Consider it. Give me a chance to get out and work and maybe win. I have won, but not particularly with the ones I really want.
Appreciate that very much. Appreciate you coming down, Mr. Nelson. Craig Lowe, Mayor Lowe. Appreciate you being with us tonight.
My pleasure. Good to see you all. I am Craig Lowe, Mayor of Gainesville. And the City of Gainesville on May 6th did develop a position in opposition to the single-member district system. And I think in a part of this, and especially from what I've heard tonight and previously, we've heard about how undesirable it is to divide a community of interest. Well, any of the plans that have been put forward for a single-member district system would divide a community of interest, and that community of interest is one that I'm very concerned for, and that is the City of Gainesville. There would be no way to create a single-member district system that did not divide Gainesville. And this has often been viewed as a means to increase representation for rural voters, and especially rural communities in small towns. But let's take the case of Hawthorne, for example. It has 857 voters. They're a small percentage of the overall county, but even in a single-member district, that would be a very small portion of a single-member district. And so Hawthorne would have only a small share, if you will, of one commissioner. They would have zero electoral accountability for any other commissioner. Is this really an improvement in Hawthorne's representation? Actually, I mean, I think it could be argued that it would work in the other direction. Yet each voter in Hawthorne currently votes for 5 commissioners, as does each voter in the City of Gainesville. And this is in keeping with the concept of one person, one vote. But my concern is that the genesis of this proposed charter amendment is an attempt to gerrymander in such a manner so as to do something other than one person, one vote, and that is in turn to produce a particular outcome. And also I think that single-member districts will have a greater tendency to pit parts of the county against one another in a divisive manner. So I urge you to not place this particular ballot question on the ballot. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming over tonight, Mayor.
My pleasure. Thank you for your service. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Rod Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez, please come forward.
Thank you. My name is Rod Gonzalez, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I know my time will be limited. Will I be able to ask Professor Wall a question or two?
If you just address
Okay, I'll address it to you guys.
He was kind of here for all of us.
I had several studies, but to be honest, most of them did deal with the minority representation, African American, which, as I understand, is a protected category. Okay, so it's not rural representation, anything like that. But I still have a couple points I think are quite relevant. I have a memorandum of law from former Attorney General Bob Butterworth, where he states, in the case of Chapman versus Meyer, a single-member district plan is the most legally acceptable method of this districting and is the easiest to defend in court. In fact, in those cases where court draws or the plans, the court has indicated the single-member district should be used in the absence of the most compelling necessity. I also have, what I found was a good study by Dr. Renee Roca, political scientist at the University of Iowa. And she states, to date, no study shows that a ward or single-member district hurts minority policy interests. Once again, I also view that as anyone who feels disenfranchised. Research has demonstrated that minority representatives who are elected from ward systems act as fervent advocates for the minority cause who are voted to support. When minority officials are accountable to a majority Anglo constituency, as would be the case in at-large systems, their behavior is more like the Anglo constituency. So everyone ends up blending and looking to be the same. My question would be, the data that Professor Wald gave us really dealt with only 2 districts going to the county line and 3 within the city, and that's kind of backwards.
Yeah, and that's no longer, well, it's not before us right now. That's not the question before us right now.
I understand, but the data presented really made it almost seem like this would not be a good thing to do. So I would want to ensure that none of you really would be using that data to deter you. I'm part Latino. Are Latinos currently a protected category? Does anyone know? They are? Thank you. Currently, are there any at-large districts that are switching to single-member for better Latino representation? Do we know?
I know there have been court suits over that, particularly in the Miami area.
Okay.
Osceola County. Thanks.
Now, is the county now required in 2011 to redistrict anyways because of the census?
2000.
So it wouldn't be too much of a burden, I would think, to, in fact, also go to single-member?
Every
Potentially.
political body that has districts at all will be redistricting next year.
And does the data, whether philosophical or empirical, not in fact support the fact that voters feel better representation with single-member districts?
I don't know that will answer.
Okay. That's all I needed.
Okay.
But I would, because of the above, and obviously everything we've discussed previously, would really encourage you to at least put it on the ballot so the voters can decide. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Gonzalez. Appreciate you coming down tonight. Judy Broomfield. Judy Broomfield.
My name is Judy Brumfield. I live in the county. I don't wear overalls. Yes, and I would like for this to be brought forth to the voters. I would also like to tell you that I live in a condo community where we have, about 8 years ago, established something very small, but we have less than 300 members in our association, and we have four liaisons that we go to when we have an issue, whether it's painting or whatever it is, and that has seemed to work beautifully. I know that's a minor scale as opposed to this, but I just think that this would be really good, and I think that I would like to see us have it put through to the residents. But I would also like to see us have better services. I just saw 2 ambulances at a house the other day. A lady called to say she couldn't breathe, and 2 vehicles were called there. 6 people, 2 of them stayed in there. Is this necessary? Is this what we're paying for our extra services? I mean, this is kind of ridiculous. So is this what we're paying for our extra fee assessment? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming tonight. Dr. Michael Bowie. Doctor?
Good evening. My name is Michael Bowie, president of the Alachua County branch of the NAACP. And I think from the information that we saw today, there's a decision to be made by the 14 individuals before me, whether or not we should have single-member districts or not. I listened to what Dr. Wald stated, and first of all, I appreciate you for having him come forth, because I think the information that he presented was extremely important, especially in reference to minority communities. Because one of the things that I've asked every time that we've come before this commission is, how are these districts going to be drawn? Now, when we talk about the issue of the city, then this urban community, and we talk about the way the districts were set up, we heard a little bit more about District 1 and how it was designed and all of those things to make sure that there was minority representation. Based on these 5 areas, the question is, will we not have that? And I think that the presenter did talk a little bit more about whether or not that would become an issue in this community, thus fragmenting or diminishing the votes of a population. Now, if we take a look at this information out here, I have the ability to vote for 5 individuals at this particular time. Maybe the person that represents me, should we have a district, is not representing what I feel is important in my particular community. But I know that if that one isn't, maybe somebody else that I took a vote on might be interested in what's going on in my community. That is why I am against single, or we as the NAACP is against single-member districts, because we have the ability to go to any of the 5 commissioners or all of the 5 commissioners and state our opinion. Now, a lot of things that I've heard here today in reference to the fire department and all those other areas, I think those are some real serious issues. And it sounds to me that there's issues with the commissioners and not necessarily the process. Because if you're in an area where you're being neglected, then I think that's a community issue. That's a countywide issue. And I think that's something that maybe we need to be educated more about. Those of us that live in the city feel that, because I have people I represent the Alachua County branch of the NAACP. And so some of these areas that are neglected are areas where there are there's an African American or people of color population. So if, for example, they're not getting those services in enough time, or their services are being neglected, that's something that we need to come forth with as well. But I don't believe that changing from the current system of at-large election to a single-member district election is the way to go. And that is why the NAACP is against this. Thank you.
Appreciate very much coming by, Dr. Bowie. Sure do. Appreciate those remarks. Susan Botcher, please come forward and introduce yourself to us and say what you'd like.
My name is Susan Botcher. I'm a resident of Gainesville. And I really understand why the citizens who have spoken before me have the anger that they do. They don't feel that their voices are being heard. They don't feel that they're being represented. But what bothers me is, for some reason, the idea that single-member districts is going to elevate their concerns or turn the volume up on their voice when they go to speak to their elected officials. I think it's just it's misplaced. And what I'm concerned about is, if you go to single-member districts, and as a voter, if I go to that one county commissioner who represents me, and that county commissioner says, you know what, Ms. Botcher, you're right. I agree with you, and the commission needs to do X, Y, and Z, but I'm only one vote. You need to go convince the other 4 commissioners. So I go to those other 4 commissioners, and they say, you're not one of my constituents. What do I care what you think? This is the value of having 5 votes instead of 1. The broader picture of why single-member districts are not a good idea is based on what Dr. Wald very, brilliantly brought forth. He made something very complicated easy to understand, is that if you put this on the ballot, the voters are voting for something that we really don't know about. You don't know about, Dr. Wald doesn't know, and if he doesn't know how it's going to shake out, God help us. What I like is, in the packet that was sent out on the corner there, at the end of the packet was a paper said the case, it says the case for not putting the single-member district proposal on the ballot, and on the very back page, it says within the role of this commission to keep a seriously flawed proposal off the ballot, regardless of the vocal pressure to put it in. The proposal has two serious flaws, and the reason I'm reading this is not to you, because I know that you all have read it, and probably the people who have picked up the packet have read it, but this is also for people maybe watching on TV. It says this proposal has two serious flaws. If passed in its present form, its advocates could easily end up with less responsive representation than they believe they have now, and without a map, this is the important part, without a map of the resulting districts, reasonable people cannot form a reasonable opinion as to the impact and merits of the proposal. So basically, what you would be doing by voting to put this on the ballot is asking the voters to vote on something that they really don't know about, because we don't know about it. Those of us in this room don't know about it. And like I said, Dr. Wall doesn't know about it. What I do like about this also is that they give a suggestion how to salvage the idea. Suggests that the county commission put a straw measure on the ballot in 2018, asking if the people want a concrete proposal for single-member districts put before them in 2020. If a majority vote yes, then the commission should draw up a set of binding districts that can be presented along with a charter amendment in 2020. This is one way, and maybe the only way, that the people can make an informed decision on the issue. And that's where we look to you in your wisdom to, if you are going to put something on the ballot, it should be something that the public is well informed and will understand. And again, if we don't understand it and we don't have the answers in this room, then how is the voter going to have that? Thank you.
We appreciate your comments, certainly. Appreciate you coming tonight. Cleve Sharp. Mr. Sharp?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, my name is Cleve Sharp. Last night was a good example of how mixed up this county is. I looked at the fire service debate for hours, and they're talking about doing things that not giving a lot of thought about what they are asking for. One example, you want to do a fire service for the whole Alachua County, and you're asking for a quarter of a penny. If you're going to, do a fire service, you want to ask for at least a penny, so you won't have to come back to the county taxpayers 2 years from then and ask them for something more. And they're hearing taxes, taxes, taxes. They're tired of taxes. I don't blame them. But anyway, a good example, too, is I lived most of my life in East Gainesville, where we had minority representation. And this is a good at-large district. It's not a single-member district. People have a tendency to be terrified when you mention about single-member districting because they don't know what single-member districting is all about. They're not listening. And we believe in accountability. That's what we need in a single-member district. That's what we need if we continue to have at-large elections. Now, Dr. Ward, God bless him, but he was talking about the possibility of the legality if we do a single-member district. And my thing is, what I've heard is that go ahead on and put single-member districting on the ballot and let the people decide how much they want to pay for some lawyers and some judges. Let's see how it's going to work out. And then if we come out and say that we were wrong on single-member districting, because I don't believe we will be, then we'll reappeal it. Simple as that. But don't be afraid, to do this. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you, Ms. Sharp. Thanks for coming down. Frank, for the Help me out here a little bit.
Fortaleza.
Fortaleza.
I'm sorry we got that wrong.
It's pretty close to Florida, actually. Yeah.
You're doing better. Frank
All right.
Fiordalisa,
There
yes.
you go. Thank you, sir. Apologize, and we're glad to have you tonight. Thanks for coming down.
Thank you all. Thank you all for your service, and thank the doctor for his great presentation. I'd like to say, first of all, I'm in favor of putting this on the ballot. I'd also like to say that this is not a hearing to decide whether or not we have single-member districts. And people have come up and they have inferred, or maybe they believe, that this is going to be a path that is going to take place. And it's only to see if people want it, to put it on the ballot. Now, I've heard a lot about 5 votes. To have 5 votes, I don't want 5 votes. I only want 1. And I want that person to be responsive to me. If at-large representation was such a great idea, we could have at-large 25 congressmen from the state of Florida. I have 25 votes. Unfortunately, the 25 of them would be in Miami, Orlando, and Tampa. They might live here, but that's what happens here. Because representatives need only be elected by people in the center of town. Therefore, people living on the outskirts don't have that opportunity, don't have that representation. Fear. The gentleman said that people are afraid. It's the only reason why I can see that the commission doesn't put this on the ballot, is because people are afraid that it's going to pass. And if you are against it, come out and vote against it. Let the people who are in favor of it vote for it. That's what we're about. That's America. I thank you all.
Yeah, we thank you, sir, for coming tonight. Thank you so much. Walter Willard. Mr. Willard?
Walter Willard. Everybody up, better body. I was at the health center. Last night, so on some Discord. Mr. Friday introduced Mr. Sell, walked the Bunny Bridges, running for the school board. Former Alachua with me. I thought she was former mayor of Archer. She's former mayor of Alachua. Mr. Sell walked and said, "Oh, yeah!" And I had to go there, and it started getting real loud. I had to go. He didn't come here. Like I said, I didn't have no moped. I would like to come here and make sure those levies wasn't going to take effect until the end of middle of 2011 or end of 2011. I see, don't have to worry about that. So look like I was in the right place. Straw hats or derby hats. People get the vision of a scarecrow with straw hat. I think it means derby hats that they wear at the Kentucky Derby. Do you know there's a million different kind of derby hats those women wear at the Kentucky Derby? There's a million kind. They never wear the same hat at the Kentucky Derby. I don't think Kentucky Derby is coming here. Even though we all be riding horses and might look like the Kentucky Derby. Just on question number 4. Why is 4 stuck between 5 and 6? 4-2. Why is it stuck between? I can't understand this here.
Yeah, we'll put them all in order for you, but right now we're on the question of single-member districts.
Question of salaries. Single-member districts.
Yes, sir.
People always claiming to be, oh, I'm the people's choice of this and this. 43% of African Americans, that's still not a demographics. Let me tell you what a demographics is. Demographics is boomers, elderly, childbearing, menopause. That's a demographics. People always jumping up. I'm the people's champion. What demographics of people are you? You know, if you put this on the ballot, ill-advised, like Commissioner Mayor Lowe said, it'd be ill-advised. I think it'd be ill-advised too, for the simple reason that if you don't do it, it's going to be ill-advised. That's why if you do it, it's going to be ill-advised. Anything you do is going to be ill-advised. Every time you fix something, every time you don't feel like you've accomplished nothing. That's why I'm glad Ms. Burgess is not running against Garner Paulson. I said, oh, you're running for District 1 or some other district, but not against Garner Paulson. I said, thank goodness. Thank goodness you're not running against Paulson. Because he don't take nothing from nobody. And he's liable to be elected too by the childbearing age. Because they like that man. They ain't welcome out there. Those kids wasn't welcoming out no wagon to those school board members when they said, what did that child say when she brought in that petition from her friends about the school uniforms? They weren't welcoming out the Gumbaya wagon, I can tell you that much. It was something kidding to keep your laws off my body. And we weren't going anywhere. We just think this is Miami. We don't have any big dress, big family with 14-year-old, 13-year-old girls running around here that matter can a teeth strap or halter top can hold in.
Let me get you to start to conclude your remarks, sir. We appreciate it so much.
It's no kids. It doesn't matter what they wear around here. If it was kids in Miami, it would be a difference.
But we're all happy that we're not on the school board. I can tell you that. They've had some tough choices.
I know
we
that's
appreciate
right.
you coming tonight. We certainly do. Thank you so much, sir.
I know that's right.
That's right. You are so right, and you're also right to say that this is a difficult question, and
it sure is. It sure
thank you
is.
for
I'm
that.
not going to say it now.
All right. Well, we thank you for that so much. Let me recognize the next speaker here, Ken Cornell. Ken? Welcome back. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Commission members. Thank you for your countless hours of work. I appreciate the vast number of issues and questions that you guys are putting on the ballot from the past meetings. I believe the public's involvement, passion for this process, and the manner in which you've conducted yourselves is extremely valuable to our community, and for this, I just want to tell you all thank you. As I said in the past meeting, I'm opposed to the question of single-member districts based on the simple fact that we have no idea what the districts will look like, and as a result, the risk of unintended consequences, in my opinion, far outweighs the benefits of essentially changing the game. As our expert tonight explained, we simply do not have the data. I made a football-rugby analogy at the last meeting, and I would like to make another one this week. Many of my friends in the audience, as well as I, think that our country should be energy independent. They jumped on the energy independent bandwagon a few years ago, and it's a great idea that we all want, but the true debate is how do we get there? Like now, we all want better representation, and so single-member districts is being proposed. The question really is, how do we get there? Again, I've had no problem, cell phone, Facebook, coming down to the county commission with speaking to any of our commissioners, and I felt very represented with all of them. And I think how do we get there is the question. You know, back to my analogy with energy independence. There's a number of my friends that we all chanted, drill, baby, drill. That didn't work out so well. Okay? It hasn't worked out so well. Did any of us foresee what happened? Could we have foreseen what happened? No way. No way. The risk of unintended consequences in the Gulf, we're going to have to live with now for the rest of our lives. And we should not move forward with single-member districts because of this risk of unintended consequences, in my opinion. You know, it's like we think we know how to stop the leak, but if we change the game and change the political process right now, we won't have a chance to stop it. I mean, we will, 10 years, okay, maybe even more. So I'd like you to consider your vote tonight. A lot of great ideas are being put on the ballot. The work you've done should be congratulated. Please don't be the County Review Commission architects that was responsible for changing our county to single-member districts, which resulted in a political disaster. In conclusion, what I heard tonight, Mr. Joe Little indicated that single-member districts would not result in better representation. And if he said that, that's good enough for me. Thank you all for your service. I believe our community has improved as a result of your efforts.
Thank you for those kind words. We appreciate it very much. Brian Harrington. Mr. Harrington?
Make it a green light this time?
Yeah, we're going to set it just right.
Okay, appreciate it. Good evening. My name is Brian Harrington. I'm going to try to make my many fractured points brief. First of all, this evening we've heard a lot of evidentiary and philosophical opinion points. To me, the majority of the points made were more on the philosophical side, for or against, just like Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, single-member district, at-large district. Most of them seem to be decisions rooted in philosophical and opinion-based, even by that of the expert that was brought here before you, couldn't provide all of the evidentiary information necessary to say definitively yay or nay, this will or will not have an impact. So that is one point. And the second point is, if you look at the state of Florida, not just Alachua County, there are 120 Florida House districts and 40 Florida Senate districts. I vote for one, not 120 Florida House representatives, and I vote for one, not 40 senators in the state of Florida. And that is because we are set up in what is ostensibly a statewide single-member districting system. So if it works for the state, if it works at the federal level, if it works for our city, why can't it too work for our county? And then, as I understand it, we're going to have the opportunity to come talk about the next item when it's up for consideration, 7-2. There'll be a public comment.
I don't think there'll be a next item,
This is
unless
gonna be
this is the motion right here.
Okay. Well, then I was just going to put up, I guess the overhead's not going to work, is it?
If you put it on that square, if you've got something there, though, turn it on.
That is the precinct boundary map from the Supervisor of Elections office, and I tried to highlight in red what represents the city of Gainesville. I might have one line wrong, but it's fairly close. And what was presented by Dr. Wald was that you could not defensively come up with equal member districts if you were to ascribe 2 districts to the city of Gainesville and 3 to the unincorporated Alachua County areas and the other municipalities. And I would argue that you don't necessarily have to constrain your districts to the city of Gainesville. What is to say that district number 2 would not constitute West Gainesville and 2 or 3 of the districts in West Urban Gainesville, that the central Gainesville district would not incorporate districts to the south in the unincorporated area, et cetera. So I don't think you can tell the whole story when you don't look at the picture from that perspective. It's kind of the glass half full, glass half empty. In economics, you can make numbers say what you want. So anyway, appreciate it very much.
We appreciate you coming down tonight. Appreciate those comments. Just for the record, I think everyone here can rest assured that all of us up here understand and recognize that if there were districts drawn, each would have more or less 50,000 people in it, however you drew them. Darlene Pafalo. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I was up late last night.
I know you were.
12:30 and had to get up at 5, so I'm still here. Anyway, thank you for what you're doing. Actually, the last thing I was going to say was exactly what was said there. I think we should put it on the ballot for the people to vote for, and I think once we do that, then the districts will be the way they should be legally and the best way to draw the districts. And a little bit with what Mayor Lowe said with Hawthorne, Mr. Martin, I think if you had your district, single district that your city could vote for, and you're 846, you probably would win whoever you wanted to win in your district, and probably more than 42 votes to get him elected, too. So I think the single-member district does work if the people want that person there. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. Appreciate your comments. John Beck. Mr. Beck, thank you for coming tonight.
First of all, I'd like to thank you all once again for all your hard work. I do appreciate it, and I'd like to thank Dr. Wald. I think he gave a great presentation trying to enlighten us all on this. I'd like to ask you all to put the single ballot initiative up for a vote. I live in rural Alachua County, and I don't feel like I'm being represented right now. I would much rather have one commissioner that would be responsible and accountable to me, that I would feel much more comfortable with than what we have right now. I'd like to respectfully disagree with Mayor Lowe that I think different opinions from different districts is a good thing, that we don't want to have everybody of like mind on a commission. We want to have different ideas and come up with the best solutions. After listening to Dr. Wald, I think his initial statement was probably the key to it all, and that is that your view depends on where you stand right now. And therefore, you know, I would urge you to put the single-member districts on the ballot, because this is what it's really all about. We need to find out where everybody stands right now and what their opinion is as to which would be the best system for electing commissioners. So if you would do that, I would greatly appreciate it, and thank you again for all your time and effort, and we appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. Thank you so much, sir. Tom Coward, former Commissioner Tom Coward. Glad to have you with us tonight, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I've listened very carefully at a number of people coming up saying they're not representative. They're represented with 5 commissioners at the present time. One commissioner cannot carry any motion that's come before this commission to solve any problem. It takes 5. And everyone in here should understand that they need to have the ears of 5 commissioners and not one, because one commissioner cannot carry a motion to solve any of the problem that they might have. After listening to Dr. Walls, I can't for the life of me see how you as commissioners, after all of the information that you have received, can come up now and put this before the people. You don't understand all the ramifications that's going to come about from a single-member district. Dr. Walls could not give you an answer on what the ramifications or what the impact will be. Now you're asking the people to come up and vote for something that you don't understand. Dr. Walls does not know what the ramification would be to vote. And the people are voting on a situation where they feel that they're having some problem with the ambulance, with the fire service, with the services that they have. And you're going to tell the people that if they vote for single-member district, the single-member district going to solve these problems? If this was the panacea for solving the problem, we would have had single-member district a long, long time ago. This is not going to do it. I urge you, the single-member district is taking away from people privilege to address their concern with 5 commissioners, to only address their concern with 1 commissioner, and they only have 1 vote. I will urge you not to put this before the people that you don't understand, and the people in Dr. Wall's presentation gave you an idea that if much of what you're going to put on the ballot is going to be challenged, and you're asking the people to put you in this kind of a situation, to put the commission in a situation. They will have problems trying to draw a district line that's going to satisfy the people, which after all, after they have the single member, even if they have single member district, is not going to solve the problem that the people I heard here tonight are having. They're not going to be able to solve. That's not going to do anything for the services that they have out there. Thank you very much, and I urge you not to put this complex situation before the voters, which they don't understand, because most people, when they don't understand the situation, they're not going to vote for it anyway. And those people who have some ulterior motive, and I don't know what they are, will vote for this for some other reason other than what I heard presented here tonight. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming down, Mr. Coward. Surely do. Thank you so much. I've exhausted the cards I had. Did I miss anyone? Please come forward and introduce yourself and speak to us.
Sitting on my card.
Okay.
I'm Susan Baird, and friends, once again, this is the end of our long series. How exciting, finally. Mr. Chairman and the rest of the team, I really commend you for going all out and getting our expert here at this presentation. It's vital that we do get all the information possible to make the best decision. And I think the funny thing is, after all, I'm not sure if we know whether it's better or worse now than we did before. And I think that also gives us enlightenment that either way we go, I don't think there's going to be a major fear factor. It's not going to be that the oil is going to spill over here into Gainesville either. It's just going to be that now we have another option to think about to how we're going to go ahead and proceed with electing our officials. There's so much I try to put in my little brain and communicate to y'all. Let me start with some of the basic philosophical elements here. And it is important to start with philosophical first, and then we'll go down to strategies and objectives. And basically, the overall objective is, I think, overall, is better representation. And I think that's what we had mentioned from the very beginning. And I think that was one of the final conclusions that Dr. Wall did state at the very beginning is specifically enhance the representation of ethnic, racial, minority group. And if it's good for an ethnic, minority, racial group, why isn't it good just for that group, period? That seems to be important right there. And the other thing that I get very concerned about if you have an at-large voting system is that 51% of the voters are going to vote all 5 in. That gives you groupthink. So it'll be lopsided one way or the other. Right now, I think the current system likes their side because that's the one that's winning. So I think the best way to do it so that whenever any system is lopsided is to have single-member districts so that you can have specific representation in each of those districts and always have a balance. And I think that's what's always made things work better is a balance and a better representation. And I think that the information that the young man gave about how most of our I'm still new at this whole government thing. In Florida, the legislature and all that, how that's all voted in, it's a single-member district, and Florida always has been, well, actually, the whole nation, so that everybody gets the representation in that specific state, in that specific area for better representation. So the final conclusion, I think, overall, is it may not be easy. I think we will be able to draw those lines out if we work hard enough. It's not going to be easy at all. And there will be those possibilities. That's why it's important to have good government officials to go ahead and put all that together so that we can go ahead and make the right decisions in tactics. And that's later on. So I think with all that in mind, it would be a good idea to put it up for vote for the rest of the county so that they can go ahead and determine the same thing. But overall, I think it is a good idea. They're both good. Let's go ahead and see. But I still think it's a little bit better just because of that representation. Thank you very much. And we really appreciate you all. And because of all the inspiration, I'm now running for County Commissioner, District 4. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming tonight. John Dumoulin, did I say that right? All right, come forward to speak to us, please, sir. Welcome. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Appreciate all
I'm
your work. I have to say that, am I in order here?
No, you're in order. Go ahead.
I am a little scared by the proposal because it strikes me that a large part of the drive for it is, of course, we want better representation, we want more perfect expression of our wills and needs, but that unlike, and there's kind of an implicit comparison of the protection of minorities with the situation of outlying rural, quote-unquote, rural voters. And I see a contradiction there, that in order to really make that work, you'd need not 5 commissioners, but 20, because the individual areas that have any kind of integrity and uniformity that respond to those wishes are too small to together compose a meaningful large area, or at least no one has produced a map. The gentleman who spoke recently suggested, with a sweeping gesture over the map, that this could be done. But it strikes me that those who were proposing it, or many of them, or that it would appeal to, would end up being unsatisfied with the result. You'd end up having an expensive process. The ideal would be like 20 representatives. Then you can have here, there, and everywhere. Everyone would have their representative. You'd have a very expensive and cumbersome government. Would that be better? I don't think so. I don't think the people really don't want that. You have to live with 5 representatives. No one has presented a map. There are no competing maps saying, look, it could be this way, it could be that way, we're going to vote on this map. No. You're competing about, you're voting, you're proposing an idea, an aspiration, a hope that this would produce the result you want. And I fear that this would not be the case. Thank you.
We appreciate that very much. Dr. Wall, you've been quoted a lot tonight. You're in the last hour. Would you like to make a few comments?
When I was told that I made a complex topic simple, I fear I may now lose my standing in academia, so I'd like somebody to withdraw that comment. Let me speak for a moment as a citizen of Alachua County, not as anybody with particular expertise here, and just say, if I were sitting where you're sitting, facing a motion like this, I would ask 3 questions. First of all, is there clearly a problem for which this is a solution? Secondly, are we confident that the proposed solution will solve the problem and not introduce other problems? And third and finally, I would ask, is it reasonable to assume that voters in the midst of a partisan election year, with lots of other issues on the ballot, lots of contests to occupy them, can really be expected to make an informed decision about this question? I think those are the 3 issues that you have to decide, not in adopting single-member districts or not, because, as you've said, that's not what you're doing, but simply, do you want to put it before the voters? In my mind, again, absent confident answers to those 3 questions, I would be reluctant to put anything on the ballot. But it seems to me those are the questions you have to decide. Is there a clear problem for which there's a solution? Is it a solution, or could it potentially make things worse? And finally, can you really assume voters have the capacity to make a reasoned judgment in an election year like this one, where partisan issues and statewide initiatives are going to grab the vast majority of the attention? It seems to me those are questions you have to ask this year.
And the last one, only charter amendments can only go on at the general election, so we don't really have a choice there. I appreciate that. All right. Somebody has not, I don't think I've recognized you tonight, have I? Come forward and speak to us. Introduce yourself.
My name is Tom Hayes Marson. Thank you for letting me speak. I want to say the thing I heard the professor say initially is it probably doesn't make a difference one way or the other. And that seems to be the history, right? And so probably that on that level, a decision doesn't make a difference. But what concerns me is what I'm hearing, and I'm responding really to the three questions. The history of mankind is not good when small groups make decisions for large groups, just in general. And I think we're successful as a society and successful as a country because the electorate tends to be smart and they tend to make right decisions over time. So it seems to me that to not allow the vote to go to electorate is an elitist perspective that says, we know, 14 or 15 of us, we know much better than the electorate. And yet that's not history. History is we make good decisions. And so I don't see how you can vote against allowing the people to vote. And finally, I looked today too briefly, and I didn't bring it, the mission, that's not the term, but on the website of this group. And it seemed to me, what I read was that your decision, is this an important enough issue to put on the ballot? Not one way or the other, make the decision yourselves. So I say, trust the people. Put it on the ballot. And if it doesn't work, 10 years from now, we'll be here, and you can reverse it. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and we appreciate so much the input we've had tonight. One of the interesting things and one of the things that all of us up here really appreciate, and I know that I speak for all of us, is 18 citizens spoke tonight, if I counted them right. In 2000, over 3 public hearings, 15 citizens spoke. And so this has been such a wonderful experience, and the participation that we've had, and knowing that we've already put some things on the ballot, the participation that we're going to have from our citizens from now until November 2nd, regardless of this question, is going to be I think a real interesting fall. And I appreciate all of you coming and speaking. Now, this time I'll recognize any member that wishes to be spoken.
Mr. Chair, I think one of the members of the public was motioning that he wanted to speak.
Did I miss someone? I'm sorry, I didn't have a card and didn't see a hand up there. We'll make this 19.
Stone, private citizen. Just wanted to piggyback off of what Mr. Hayes Morrison said. Don't get wrapped up in the whole idea that you've got to decide on single-member districts. Are they good? Are they bad? The merits, are they valid? What's going to happen? What's not going to happen? All you got to decide is whether we're putting them on the ballot or not. Let the people vote. Just let them vote.
Appreciate it. Could you say your name one more time for us?
Evan Stone.
Thank you, Evan.
Thank you.
Appreciate that very much.
Chair.
At this time, we'll recognize members in. Mr. Grundy.
Mr. Chair, as the maker of the motion, I just wanted to, before I go into my comments, I'll reserve them later, but I did want to ask a question to, again, all of my colleagues on this dais. And some of us on this body, there's a couple of us that have never spoken, so I want to ask this of everybody on this body, and I'd like everyone to answer this. I really would appreciate an answer because I think our public deserves that is we're working for, deserves to hear from us. My question to everyone on this body is the same as last time. Will this improve county government? That's my first question. My second question is this necessary now? If so, why? And why are you voting for or against it? Let the public know why we are voting the way we're voting. They deserve to hear from us. Because for us to just arbitrarily make votes and not let them know why is doing a disservice to all of them. We're just voting. So I'm asking that to all of you, everyone up on this body. And I close.
Thank you very much. Any comments by any member up here wish to speak? Mr. Martin.
Thank you. I'm caught in the middle here, which I often find myself in the middle, which, as I heard some pundit once say, people in the middle of the road, you find dead skunks and possums. So, but I find myself quite often very much in the middle of the road. Anyway, my name is John Martin. Y'all, I think, know that. And I am going to take Mr. Grundy's up on his offer. So I'll try my best. I may have a few lengthy remarks here, and then I'll try to shut up. And then I'll try to shut up for the rest of the time. I just want to get these points out.
You're recognized.
First of all, let me just say that I intend to support this motion, and I intend to support it for basically the following reasons. First, let me just say that none of the decisions I have made, and I can only speak for myself up here, have anything to do with the current county commission as far as the personalities on that commission. I honestly believe that to vote based on the current personalities, if anyone for or against it, is a disservice, because, as we've heard, quite very few serve more than 2 terms, and this is at least a potentially 10-year proposal, and much longer, any of these. So I would encourage people not to focus on the personalities, but rather the principles behind what we're trying to decide tonight. That has certainly been my goal. Whether or not I've achieved it is debatable. I'm not going to go down and counter every single argument, but I will say a couple of things. One, this argument that we don't know what the consequences is. I understand that, but my God, I'm grateful that this country does not operate that way in general. Because you could go back to the original decision to make it an at-large county. Can you imagine if the people, for those of you who are in favor of keeping it the way it is, can you imagine that the argument was, well, we don't know what's going to happen? I would venture to say that the members of the Charter Review Commission back then had no idea exactly what was going to happen either. This country was literally founded on an idea. So don't belittle ideas, and I guarantee you no one could have foreseen what has happened to this great nation. So to use the argument that we don't know what the consequences would be is to bury your head in the sand. I'm not saying change for change's sake, but to simply dismiss an idea because we don't know what the consequences, to me, is cowardly. That's the way I feel. That does not necessarily mean you should support this. I'm just saying that argument alone doesn't hold much weight. As far as what the districts would look like, and let me back up and say that there has been implications up here that people have maybe not thought this out too well. All I can tell you is I've been looking at this issue for the last 10, 15 years. I was a big proponent of it the last time this happened. So I can only speak for me. I'm not saying I'm anywhere near Professor Wall by any stretch or someone like that. But I have done reading. I've, in fact, read his works today and heard what he said. I read them over the week that we had the things, and I had greatly admired it and appreciate it. We do have an idea of what the districts would look like under this proposal. Forget the one that would change the 3-2 and all that. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but if you listen to what was actually said, I think Professor Wall actually made a case for how we would see these districts. One of the top criteria he used was that percentage of how many voters in one district versus the other, and how that balanced out, and it had to be no greater than 10% or it probably wouldn't hold muster. That's how the current districts are drawn. So if absent some other idea, I think it's safe to say that the districts that would be drawn, if you simply said 5 single-member districts, would resemble quite seriously the districts we have now. The difference would be that the voters in that district would have more say about that electorate. And I don't like to personalize it, but since I think it was drawn at me because Hawthorne, maybe it wasn't, I have never, let me say this, I have never advocated once up here or any time you've ever heard me that any support for this is intended for someone from Hawthorne or Waldo to be guaranteed, or Archer. That's ridiculous. I think though that 850 votes out there would have it doesn't take a math scientist to figure that 850 people vote would have a much greater percentage in a single member district than the countywide at-large district. You don't have to be a professor to see that. Okay? That's all as far as I've advocated for why I think single member districts have the potential to help some of these frustrations that people have voiced from the outlying areas. And I'm not necessarily advocating what I'm about to say, but I think it makes a point. If you take 5 electorates and elect them every time from the same pool of voters, you could make a case that 4 of them are not necessary. Which is why we have districting throughout the state of Florida and the United States. That's the reason. Because when you continuously elect them from the same pool, you tend to homogenize those people, and they tend to have basically the same opinions. You know, if you look at it, there's not a huge disparity of opinions and I didn't mean to make it about the county commission, but if you think about it, that is one of the reasons why there's not. It's natural to expect that the same pool of voters are going to elect the same philosophical people. They're not going to elect opposites. That's why on the Gainesville City Commission, you have seen some in the past, divergent points of view. Because some people come from single-member districts and some at large, by their very nature, they're going to have a very different point of view. I actually think that's healthy. I mean, for everybody to, I don't want everybody to be like me. It'd be a boring place if everybody were like me. Of course, everybody would be a Gator fan, and they should be anyway. But that's another issue. As I say, you can see what the districts would look like. Let me just go back to my prepared remarks. I just wanted to get out some points. You asked to be prepared. I'm being prepared. I promise I'll try my best not to say anything after this. You asked why I support this. First of all, as I said, I've been behind this for a long time. I believe it will better represent our diverse county. It goes back to what I said a while. I've never sought to secure that spot for one individual person. My only goal has been to diversify that idea. I've heard that single-member districts will lead to officials caring only about their districts. Although I acknowledge this possibility, I believe this is unlikely, just as now, in order to get something passed, you're going to need 3 votes. That's never going to change no matter what the districting is. It is my hope that this will actually lead to a better governing of Alachua County. If you can't compromise, I've sat on city commissions, if you can't reach a compromise with at least 2 other people in there, it ain't a very good idea. It's not a good idea, and that person is not going to be very effective if all they ever do is their own single, and they'll be booted out by their own people because they're going to be judged by their accomplishments, ultimately, I hope, rather than just their words. One of the most consistent issues in our politics throughout the nation has been campaign finance reform. We even passed local campaign finance laws designed to cut money's influence. I believe you could make a case that single-member districts, by their very size, will help to accomplish this, which was voted on by the people. They're saying they want people to spend less money. I agree the Supreme Court seems to have a different view. I don't particularly agree with it. One of the strongest, in my view, reasons given for not doing this is that it will hurt minorities. And I understand that argument. But I have to say, based on what Professor Wall said and what I've heard, this argument puzzles me in that all the research I've done and all the evidence that I've seen permitted tonight and in the past, that single-member districts have in fact been used to be more inclusive of minorities. I don't know, and maybe there are cases where they've been specifically used to exclude minorities. I think even I've read multiple articles that the NAACP in other areas backed single-member districts. So I'm not disparaging that. I understand. I'll get to that in a moment. And I assure you that if I, for one, and I hope you take this, if you don't believe anything else I'm saying, take this to heart. If I personally believed that this would impair a minority's right to vote or to elect an official, there is no way I would support it. No way. Now, you may disagree with me, but I hope you'll agree, if you know me at all, I would never support something like that. I never would. I've got a few more things to say, and I'll pass. We do have evidence of single-member districts. It was used as Miami and all. Volusia County, as Ms. Martin said, is a great example of single-member districts. So is Polk County. The reason they wanted them over there is because there's such a dispergent difference, and it's really clear in Volusia County, between the beaches and the rural area. And the people voted on it, even in the beaches, which most populated, they still supported it. Okay? So I think people have an inherent better judgment than probably me or anyone else that sits up here. The people have a better judgment. And you better hope that for people who have been elected officials and hope to be one, that they do. Let me just say this, too. and I think Professor Wall's comments earlier alluded to this, no matter which side of the issue you're on, this is not a radical proposal. It's not some far-flung, crazy idea, like some people have said. It's not some dangerous idea. It's been done multiple times, multiple areas across the nation. So if you don't agree with it, that's one thing, but don't make it sound like it's some kind of really radical idea. Of all the issues we have considered, as we have heard from our attorney, this has the most constitutional standing. Most of the elected bodies we have some form of single-member districts, from the local level through the state to our U.S. Congress. Even the body that represents the largest segment of Alachua County's population has single-member districts, Gainesville. I ask you that if it's fair and works for Gainesville, what is so radical about seeking it for the county? And it's been since 1987. One of the other things that was brought out, and I think it's a good and a bad thing to a certain extent, there are many people who would never have been probably elected to this county commission if they hadn't been elected in a single-member district in Gainesville to get their name out there so people could see them, okay? It's an inherent disadvantage to someone running from a rural area that is never on Cox Cable. That's a free publicity. So by its very nature, if you're elected to the City Commission of Gainesville, you have the opportunity to reach a wider audience, much wider than your constituency, because of free media and attention. People in the outlying area do not have that opportunity. I think that by going to single-member districts would increase that ability to do that. I'm almost finished. Throughout this discussion, many have questioned what people's motives for supporting this are. It is my belief that many that I have spoken to, that single-member districts have the potential for better representation of our county. In summation, here I'll sum up. That's what you probably want to hear. In summation, I would never ask anyone to vote against something vote for something they truly don't believe in. I would not ask my fellow committee members, if you actually in your heart feel that this is wrong, I would never try to get you, I may try to persuade you with arguments, but I would totally respect your vote. So what I'm asking is for those committee members that may be undecided to consider this. Of all the issues we have discussed, this one has the most constitutional standing, is the least radical, is working in many places, including Gainesville, and has had the most diverse people both for and against it. The diversity of the people we've seen both for and against this is incredible. I've heard some say that to place this on the ballot would be an error and perhaps an injustice. I would say that based on these months of meetings and hearings, that to not place this on the ballot would be a far graver error. What are you afraid of? Do we not trust the voters? I, for one, do. I ask you to support placing this on the ballot. We here aren't changing anything. You will be if we place it on the ballot. We also are proposing, if it's a terrible idea, some people, and it's a disaster and all this, guess what? We're also placing things on the ballot that you could vote to change it at the next general election. You don't have to wait 10 years if that passes. And we're lowering the percentage it takes for people to change it. So if this is a catastrophic idea, then I think people will change it. All I'm asking, I think, is for those who are undecided to give the people a chance to have this debate. Can you imagine how healthy this debate will be that we've had here these many months if it's carried on countywide? Give the people a chance to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And just to clarify, the actual amendments we have only deal with ordinances, not charter. And anyway, but you fired up there, so that's good.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I stand corrected. See, I can be corrected immediately. But I think the merits of what I say, I still stand by.
Well,
and I appreciate the opportunity to serve.
Yeah, we appreciate your service here on this commission. Who would like to speak next? Mr. Brinkman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In an attempt to answer Commissioner Grundy's questions, I do not think it is necessary. Frankly, I don't think the system is broken. I agree with Citizen Cornell that I think it is quite possible to reach any of the 5 county commissioners if with a little bit of time and effort put into it. Generally, email or phone calls work well. If you really want to sit down and have a talk with them, they'll make an appointment with you. I have made appointments and sat with county commissioners on a one-on-one. It's not that hard to do, and they don't have to agree with you. I think one thing is you do have to speak to them respectfully, politely, and have a reasoned argument. They're not interested in debating nonsense with people, and I think, frankly, that's why sometimes they don't reply, because a lot of people write in not even understanding the nature of the questions and the nature of government in general. So it's not surprising to me that they're not trying to correct everybody and educate everybody as to how the government actually functions. Most people think a county commissioner or any local government official has far more power than they actually have. But I digress. Going on to the next one. Will this solve the problem? I think not. Hardly. In fact, I think it will make things far worse. When we divide this county up into 5 sections and set each section, each district against each other, we are not building a more cohesive community. We are dividing that community. The idea that your district representative is going to be able to do anything for you is absolutely false. In fact, let's take the siting of a garbage dump, okay? It would be very easy for 4 commissioners to gang up and put a garbage dump in one commissioner's district. That commissioner may make a motion against it, and guess what? It may not even get seconded. If it doesn't get seconded, it can't even be discussed. So, Mayor Hanrahan used to say, people asked her, what does it take to get things done? In the case of the City Commission, she said it takes a motion, a second, and 2 more votes. In the case of the County Commission, you need a motion, a second, and at least 1 more vote. The fact is, I think Commissioner Delaney pointed out when she was here last meeting, that, if you have people speaking against something that is going to be cited in their area, it really upsets people when they find out that most of the commissioners sitting up there, they can't vote for. And that has been the case in the city of Gainesville sometimes on some issues. This case with the county commission, you have the opportunity. If you don't like what the county commission is doing, everybody in your area can vote against all 5 of them. You're far more likely to have an impact. I frankly am kind of amazed at the proponents of this for not seeing that it's not going to do what they want it to do. And your final question was, refresh my memory.
Oh, why are you for or against it?
Well, I think obviously I'm against it, and I think I've pretty well stated the reasons. I don't think it's going to be helpful. One final point, a citizen by the name of Jim Aiken provided us with a reasoned argument against single-member districts. The only thing I want to take issue with is actually what Susan Botcher spoke of when she quoted from that document, is that we cannot put a straw ballot on. Well, we can put a straw ballot on in 2018, but the county commission cannot draw binding districts for submission on the ballot in 2020 because the census data won't be available until 2021, and they have to use that data to draw those districts. The fact of the matter is we cannot predetermine what the districts will be before we put this mechanism in place. And that, to me, is one of the big problems and the big reason why we should stay with the system we have. If you really want to change things, we could do as Mr. Cornell suggested, and we could go to truly at-large elections. We could do a multi-member district instead of a single-member district. We could have, and I'm not going to put this on the ballot, I'm not going to make the motion, but we could actually suggest that all 5 are elected at-large, no matter where they live. Top 5 vote-getters win the seats. Some cities in Alachua County, in fact, do that. In fact, the city of Gainesville is the only city in Alachua County which has single-member districts. I conclude.
Thank you very much. I'm going to look this way, and then I'll come back though in case I'm missing somebody over here. Ms. Ferguson, do you wish to speak?
You can take him first.
Okay, I look one way. Okay. All right, Mr. Grundy, you're back.
First off, I want to say to everybody in the public, really, we appreciate you giving your feedback and taking time out of your schedule to come speak with us. We really do, because I know it's not easy to come out from all over the county to come out and be with us. I also want to take a point of privilege to actually talk to some of the folks that I met with, or if I've talked to you, or if I've met with you, or what have you. I want to take the time to thank you for, taking time out of your schedule to contact me, share your feelings and thoughts with me. It was received. I heard you. I have taken them to account, and I really do appreciate that feedback. I wanted to tell everyone and all of those on TV and out in the public that something that I asked last meeting was, I said, at that time, to date, I had not received any input. I cannot say that this time. I cannot say to date I have not received facts, because I said facts matter. And there's somebody I like to quote that facts matter in this case, and we should operate in fact. I am one, and I have said very clearly, I've heard some very virulent and vicious feedback from folks, some of it absolutely asinine and appalling in and of itself. I wasn't supporting it because I'm a racist. I wasn't supporting it for all sorts of those reasons, as I said before. If any one of you that knows me and knows me as a person, I vote based on principle. I vote based on facts, because facts matter. And I agree with Mr. Martin, and I appreciate the candor and some of the things that you said. If you really feel strongly on a position, vote how you strongly feel. I think we should all do that. But at the same token, I have to take into account feedback we're given. If I'm, just like I have made it very clear, I've heard on via radio or whatever, I seem to get the brunt of it because you and I tend to be the most vocal, Commissioner Martin, of everybody up here. But I have been consistently clear that I was against it. But at this point in juncture, I have also gotten a lot of feedback. But I'm going to say this to all those folks with that feedback and the facts that I've received. I will never make a decision, ever, because it's going to enhance me as a person, or it will, for whatever reason, I make it because I don't think it's a good decision. I will say this, is that we have seen facts. I think, Mr. Wall, thank you for coming out tonight and enlightening us, because I think it was a very enlightening presentation. I have a lot of concerns, and I think they are valid concerns. I don't think that this improves county government, and I'm sorry that some of my colleagues still won't share their feelings on that, but I will. I want to quote one of my colleagues up here who has made it clear, and we all like to quote Commissioner Little, but I will quote him again. I tend to share his feelings that there's some of the stuff in the charter that none of this needs to go to the ballot, because there's nothing wrong with it. And he said that 2 or 3 meetings ago. I agreed with him. But at the same token, there is this is a motion. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan said everyone is entitled to his or her opinion, but not his own facts. So I guess one of the citizens out there asked about the Latinos and blacks and what have you. I'm not going to make this based on race. It's not about race. It's about arithmetic. I think Mr. Wall made that clear. That arithmetic that he showed us is disconcerting. And I don't think that's one thing that concerns me about putting this on the ballot. I think it was retrogression, other issues about how we're going to draw it. But I have to tell you, a lot of folks gave us a lot of anecdotal and feelings about, last night's meeting that went till 1 a.m. I watched it. I watched all of you that were there, and I believe me, I did. I stayed up with you. I wasn't here, but I watched it. If you're basing your opinion based off a fire assessment, we need to really understand government and how it works, because it's not just those 5. You also have a county administrator, a county manager, and you have 2 deputies. You have a deputy manager and assistant manager along with them that are also a part of that government. And they present a budget to those 5 people on that dais. So what we really need to have a conversation is with our overall government, because what is our county manager presenting to those 5 and that board? Because they are operating based off recommendations. Now, there was a motion made yesterday to increase the millage rate. I think we really need to say to our administrators, to the people on that dais, to our legislators, we need to have a conversation with the county manager, because your anger is not just at those 5. Let's not kid ourselves. Let's have facts. Again, facts matter. Now, secondly, and I'm going to try to keep it brief because I know there's plenty of other people that need to talk, but I have the floor right now, and I'm going to say what I need to say. We in point, thank you, Diane, but again, we really need to really understand that everyone up here for the last 11 months, nearly 11 months, has really thought long and hard. You may not agree with every one of us. You may not like us personally. I'm not going to make this personal. Many of you I don't know, but I respect the fact that we can disagree. But I am concerned about the level of discourse that we have had when somebody disagrees with you. And I think we need to do a better job than to make this issue in the 21st century about race, or because I live in a rural area and you can't make it about that. Whether you're a member of the Tea Party, which seems to be a major element out there, or whatever party you're from, listen, if you're a conservative or a liberal, I have heard, many of the folks I've heard from have been from the conservative side. And I share many values with them. However, this is not one of those. Not this time. They say, I've heard the statement, we want our country back, we want our county back. Well, I'm concerned, what do we want our county back to what? If to what is rolling back the clock, I'm not in favor of that rolling back the clock. If it's in favor of disenfranchising folks, and I don't use that term loosely because I actually do understand what it means to be disenfranchised, not in favor of that either. If it's for, we want to get conservatives or Republicans or Tea Party folks elected because we can't get elected now, because I think one of the statements was, we like our side, so that's therefore, well, if you're a candidate, obviously you're going to say that because you're going to come before us and get free time to do that. But, listen, everyone up here is going to vote their conscience, and they're going to vote to either Senate. But I'm going to say this to you all, too. If this goes on the ballot, I'm fine with it. If it doesn't go on the ballot, I'm fine with that, too. But this commissioner today will not be voting for single-member districts. It's not because I'm a racist, because I'm not. It's not because I tend to vote based on race. The people that have made this issue about race have been from the conservative side, and it's unfortunate. It is unfortunate, and it is sad. It is truly, truly sad that I've heard the feedback. That's not all of you. That is not all of you. But I have heard it from the majority of them, and it is sad. It is truly sad. But I will tell you this: if you are in the rural area, I will put my money where my mouth is to say that just because I live in the city, ask the folks that, and it wasn't popular on this board. One of my colleagues equated it to a disaster. I talked with folks out in the rural community. Mayor Lou Nichols said they have no problem in Newberry. Newberry's out in the unincorporated area. They don't have a problem with it. I've talked to folks out in Alachua. Matter of fact, I see one of a public official that we have out in the audience, who I hold in high regard, former city manager of the city of Alachua, is out in the audience tonight. We haven't heard from him tonight, but I hold him in high regard. That's also a community. I've heard from them. They don't seem to have a problem. I think this is a select group of folks that are not getting their way and part of the process, that want to have a stake in the pie so that they can control a part of this county because they're not getting their way. Well, guess what? My colleague to my right said that he didn't have whatever his motivations were are fine, but I saw an article in the Gainesville Sun from 2002 that showed that, former Commissioner Martin said there was an issue concerning single-member districts from that Charter Review Commission, which I think, Commissioner Glazer, you were on back in 2000. Well, it wasn't put on the ballot then. I wonder why. You mean to tell me in 8 to 10 years, if it was such a hot-button issue, we couldn't put it on the ballot? There's many of you that are out here. There are folks, ask Commissioner Byerly and ask Commissioner Woods, my colleague to my right. They felt passionate about an airboat ordinance issue. They put it on the ballot. There is nothing that precludes any of you to put it on the ballot, and you couldn't do that in 8 years. I'm questioning that. If it was such a hot-button issue, why couldn't you do the work? But you want to do it because you couldn't get your way in one form or fashion. So, we quoted that there was, campaign finance reform. Some folks gave money. They circumvented campaign finance reform by giving to 527s or special interest groups to get rid of elected government because they don't like it. They want to control folks. I am truly concerned about the representation I might get because I feel like there's folks that feel like they have a special affinity they can understand all of a sudden magically, well, it's good for minorities. It's good for them.
Well, who speaks for them? I'm not speaking for minorities, and I don't think you should either. I think that we should be one Alachua County. It shouldn't be based on an east side of Alachua County or a west side of Alachua County. We're one Alachua County. And right now, the district and the voters have said they don't want single-member districts. They said it for the last 10 years, and they have decided. And I'm going to continue to support what they've decided. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Other commissioners wish to speak. Other members? Ms. Ferguson.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners. First, I'd like to thank Dr. Wall for joining us and giving us that insightful presentation. And I would like to thank the citizens who have hung in there with us for the past 10 months or so. I see a lot of familiar faces that I saw at the beginning of the process. So that tells me that there are a number of people who are truly interested in what happens to our government. I think it was Mr. Thornton that said, we have a mess. Do we? Because what I see is the system is not necessarily broken. What I think is there are personalities that we have problems, that citizens have problems with. I hear citizens say they've tried to contact the county commission or various members of the county commission and they don't get any type of response. So I'm sure you probably do feel ignored if that is what's happening. Now, why that's happening, I won't try to guess why any commissioner did not respond to an email, a telephone call, or whatever it was that person tried to, however that person tried to contact that commissioner. I have no idea. It surprises me because I have found that the opposite to be true in terms of the responsiveness of our commissioners. Again, I don't know why those individuals were not contacted, but that tells me that that is not necessarily the system that's wrong. That is about personalities, and I would question if when that happens, show up at a county commission meeting and ask those 5 representatives why they did not contact you. They do make themselves accessible, because in addition to their 9 o'clock meeting, they reconvene at 5:30 or 5 o'clock and have citizen comments at 5:30 where anyone can address them, even if you do not come and personally meet with them. There are avenues by which that citizens can talk with them. Again, so that tells me that that's a system, that is not necessarily a system problem. And what we are being asked to do is to change our system of voting. And I have said from the very beginning that in order for me to support dismantling what we currently have and move to something different, I have to be at least reasonably assured that something different is going to get us the results that we want. I'm not convinced yet that that is going to happen by moving to a single-member district system. Yes, we have heard that we don't know how, what's going to happen because we need to see the numbers with the census data, that type of thing. But I can kind of see that by going to a single-member district system, I would guess that what we have now is what we may have then, unless people like Ms. Baird and other folks step up to the plate and start running for office. You want some changes in terms of the makeup of the county commission, then you have to have different folks, and you have to be willing to vote for those differences and not continue to vote for people just because they've always been there. You talk about groupthink and that type of thing. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I do know that if we want something different than what we have now, then people have to be willing to step up to the plate and try to make a change. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes people have to run a couple of times before they may be successful in getting on the county commission, city commission, or whatever. But to change our system because we think that is how we solve the problem, I don't agree with that. I'm trying to remember whether it was, I think it was Commissioner Martin that said, I do not, in my heart, believe that that is the way we need to go. And that is that is the reason why I don't support moving to a single-member district system, although I certainly can empathize with citizens who do feel like they are not, that they don't have a voice, that they are being ignored, etc. I can understand that. And when that happens, again, to me, it's about trying to ask that question to the body that the question needs to be directed at, not us, because we're not the ones who are doing that. That's the county commission, and those 5 representatives, they are all of our representatives, not one of them, but all 5 of them. So all 5 of them are accountable to each one of us. And personally, I like that system. And if I'm going to continue to support maintaining our current system, because I think that it works. And we make the mistake of changing the way we do things, trying to hope that that is going to bring about a different result when we're trying to attack the problem in the wrong way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Appreciate it very much. Ron C. Martin.
Good evening, everyone. Let me begin my comments by this statement. This is a fine example of public discourse, and this is what, in my opinion, makes this county, this state, this nation great, that we can come here and voice our opinions. And on that note of the importance of public discourse, please don't take my comments that I'm about to give as a personal attack. In any debate, you have to have a counterpoint, point and counterpoint. So this is not personal, because as I look out to the audience, I don't know most of you. And since I don't know most of you, I have to assume that you're people of goodwill. But in many occasions, when I heard here tonight, I have to respectfully disagree. I heard a number of things. One that I found surprising, that someone actually cited the Congress and the state legislature as an example of something that's working. That amazed me. And I'm glad that there's some confidence in our government. But if you actually look at how our government works, there is countless study groups, work groups, committees that chew an issue over, spit it out, take it back in, and spit it out again. So while that process is going on, you have the political process. Our task here, as I see it, is not merely a polling group. If it was just our task to, as I said many times before, count the hands, count the heads, we are really a useless group here. We could have hired Professor Wall and any number of consultants to do it much better, to count take the temperature of Alachua County citizens. That is not our task here, at least as I see it. Our task has to be to define whether or not this issue is important enough to go on the ballot. And there got to be certain standards and tests here. And I think Professor Walls cited a good test, and it sounds very similar to the test that Professor Little put forth. And as what I've heard thus far, the single-member district just simply does not meet that test. I have to echo that this is not about whether or not this is a radical idea or not. It just seems to me to be a bad idea. It does not seem to be an adequate means of addressing the concerns, the valid concerns that I've heard this evening. I've heard a lot of emotion, and as human beings, that's our nature, and that's a good thing. That we have passion, that we believe strongly in issues, but don't confuse the virtue of courage to the extent that you become reckless. You don't go out in the woods and go, I wonder if this is poison ivy. Let me pick a part over and rub it on me to see if it is. No. That's not how you operate. This is not about courage. It's about giving thoughtful consideration to how can we improve Alachua County government. And not for just some citizens, but for all citizens. I have to respectfully disagree on some individuals' account of what history demonstrates. Sometimes history demonstrates, and actually not sometimes, in my experience, in my reflection on history, what's often popular is not always the right thing. Not to make this about race, but if we always went with what's popular, a good third of the people in this room, commissioners and audience, would have no say whatsoever in this issue. And that's not just talking about racial minorities or that's women as well. And that was the popular idea. Now, the issue about that is that over time, what's popular changes. We're here to give some thoughtful consideration to these issues. And I am troubled that after hearing facts, figures, that because of our passion, because of our strong belief, which you have every right to have, you want to force this square peg in this round hole. I just implore everyone here not to get lost in rhetoric, not to get lost in the notion if I speak loudly enough on the issue, that actually makes it right. Unintended consequences is a serious consideration. And without any particular assurance that this will make it better, it just does not make any sense to push forward on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me look this way first. Anyone wish to speak on this side? If not, I'll look this way. Anyone wish to speak? Ashley?
Yeah, I'll take an opportunity here to talk a little bit. I was wearing my straw hat today. I didn't have on overalls because it was way too hot. But I do live out in a very rural area. And I'd just like to say that we have a lot of unpaved roads out there, but we really don't want the county to pave them. And we feel like we're always well represented. We get the bookmobile out in Evanston, 2 times a month, and we have an opportunity when we see fit to talk about conservation issues. And there have been a few issues that we've had out there, and I just want to tell you that not one single commissioner has not listened to us. And the reason that they do is because they realize that everybody in Evanston votes for them, not just for one district person, but for every single one of those county commissioners. And we've had some issues out there. We'd like it a little more quieter in the county. And although the commission didn't do what we wanted, we took the initiative and did it ourselves. I heard from some of you about you read the website and you're interpreting what's on the website about what we're supposed to do. So I went back to the Alachua County Code of Ordinances to see what the Charter Commission really is. The only thing it says, besides who makes it up and all those kinds of things, it says the Charter Review Commission will review the Home Rule Charter and propose any amendments or revisions which may be advisable for placement on the general election ballot. And I'd like to just use that word advisable, because the people that were picked on this commission, they were picked by the county commissioners. They're supposed to represent the demographics of the county population, although we certainly don't have the correct gender balance here on this commission. And I felt strongly that there should have been a little better representation there. I think that what we were asked to do is to ask you to propose things, but for us to carefully evaluate what it is that was put before us. and to use our best knowledge and experience. And I think we were picked because the people here, and I've really appreciated serving with all of them, they've all taught me a little something as we went along. They were supposed to use their best knowledge and experience not to just simply be a conduit to put these things forward, but to use their best judgment to decide what it is that we're supposed to do. I'm not sure why some of us feel that we were selected to change county government. And again, that word keeps coming up, change, because change for the sake of change to me is really not good. I think about what we did, what was put before us, and the kinds of things we had to contemplate, and I think that those issues 1 through 3 certainly helped us fine-tune some of the things that have to do with county government. And I really feel strongly about things that citizens are able to do to change county government on some hands. Now, where it comes to the single-member districts, and I appreciate what Professor Wall did tonight to explain everything, because really what you did was take every issue that I've heard and said, there's no clear proof that that works better or not. You simply said mostly it's a matter of a person's own judgment, that the decision-making is primarily subjective, because you offered no real numbers that proved any of these things. Are we better represented by 1 commissioner rather than 5? I don't see that. I know in my own dealings with county government for years and years, having 5 commissioners and the ability to vote on those 5 commissioners has certainly given me a lot of responsiveness from the people in the commission. Would we reduce the influence of Gainesville in county elections? I don't see that happening either, and you certainly clarified that more than anything else, that we would have to have a great deal of Gainesville influence, no matter how the pie was cut, about how the Gainesville population will influence county government. One thing I noted was that some conservative voters said that it would give them a better opportunity to elect commissioners, and I don't understand that unless people are counting on a great deal of gerrymandering to be able to carve out districts, because the majority of the county voters are primarily Democrat and liberal, and they don't reflect conservative voting in Alachua County at this time. Also, the idea that small-town politics or small-town politicians will have a better opportunity to win in a county-wide or rather a district-wide. I just don't see that at all, because when I looked at what was provided to us, there were plenty of examples of commissioners who were elected outside of Gainesville and served for multiple terms. Why? Because they simply were good people and good politicians, and they represented the county more than anything else. And also this idea about less money being spent in elections. To me, on the contrary, and I think Professor Wall alluded to this too, it really gives special interest groups more footing on the ability to finance elections in a small district than it does otherwise, and that kind of concerns me. I think that there are plenty of arguments to keep the commission as it is. It best represents the voters, and please don't take away my right to vote. That's the one sticking point that just keeps over and over again telling me that I don't want to give up 5 votes. I don't think that a district commissioner will really have the countywide interest that we have now in our commission. And all of the commissioners, I think, really have countywide interest. I don't want to see commissioners pitted against one another, and that's going to happen. Again, we heard that again. What if somebody wants to build a garbage dump out in, Evanston? Would my commissioner really be able to override the other 4? I don't think so. And how are we going to redraw these district lines? That's the biggest question that's come before us tonight, and I don't see an answer to that. I just feel very strongly about the ability to vote for 5 people who are going to figure out whether they can tax me or not, or what they're going to do. And I really support my ability to vote for those 5 people. The other thing that came up, and it continues to come up over and over again, is the issue of race in single-member districts. At the meeting we had before, the question was asked of the minority commissioners who did not vote for single-member districts if the reason was connected with race. It was also discussed why prominent members of the black community came forth and talked about the racial undertones with single-member districts, and would single-member districts make it more difficult to elect minorities to the commission. Also, the question if a single-member commissioner would be ignored by commissioners representing districts with fewer minority voters. There were a lot of questions. You know, my job with the University of Florida had to do with public relations as well as communications and all the other things, and we knew time and time again that in public relations and really in politics, perception is reality. If the perception is out there that this is a racial issue, it is, period. Don't question it anymore, because I believe it is. The other thing that I try to do, I try to look at history, and I really enjoyed the book that Buddy McKay wrote about how Florida happened, because he talked about how we got to one voter, one rule. That occurred in 1967 after the Supreme Court ruling in 1965. Prior to that, since 1924, and I'm sure you know all this too, the way people were elected in Florida, each county elected one senator. And then the representatives were like the 5 most populous counties elected 3, the next 18 elected 2, and the remaining counties 1. I don't know if that was a good system or not, but I do know that after 1967, when you began redrawing the Florida lines, the district lines, reapportionment and everything else, that it has become probably the biggest can of worms in Florida that there ever could be, by the fact that we have 2 proposed amendments about how district lines should be drawn, and now even a 3rd one. So it certainly is a contentious issue. And if we go to single-member districts, it's going to happen here. I don't know how you'll get around the gerrymandering game that's going to result from all the political influence on how the district lines will be selected and who's going to do the choosing and how many court suits that are going to happen. You know, after the 1990 census, there was a lot more gerrymandering that took place because the Republican minority assured the African Americans and minority leaders that they would draw lines that would assure more minority representatives. When they did that, they also assured themselves that there would be more white-dominated voter groups in Florida than there had been before. The result of that is that about 36% of the voting population of Florida are Republican, but 67% of the Florida legislature are Republican. Now, is that balance? Is that the result of single-member districts, gerrymandering, or what? Is that what we're going to look at? Is that what we're going to see? You know, this is what concerns me more than anything else. These questions have not been answered. And I haven't seen, Professor Wald said there are no assurances that whatever happens will result in lawsuits, all kinds of things that we really shouldn't have to face in this county. I think that really the debate, if this were put on the ballot, if it were approved, the debate will go on and on and on. The lawsuits will cost the county millions of dollars, I would imagine, and I don't think anybody's going to be happy with the result, period. I don't. So to me, there's no reason to fix something that isn't broken and provide some kind of thing that we have no idea about what it will be, where it will go, or whatnot. But I still go back to the one principle that I've talked about time and time again. 5 votes in 8 years versus 2. And that's what you're asking me to do, and that's not what I'm willing to give up. And I don't think the voters in Alachua County, if they hear the real message, are going to want to give up 5 votes versus 2. And, well, you'd vote every 4th year, and you would vote for one person twice. You would vote for 5 in 8 years because it's staggered 3 and 2 right now. So, as you can see, I do not see any reason at all to move forward with this. I will vote against it, and if it happens to get on the ballot, there will be a lot of us trying our best to see that it's not voted in. Thank you.
Thank you very much for thoughtful comments. Other comments? Little.
Mr. Chairman, I made a statement last week, I think, or last meeting, about how I view the role, and I won't repeat that except for one point. I have a disagreement with my former colleague and friend, Tom Coward. He made the statement that
the people won't understand this and they'll vote against it. My fear is, based on what happened in recent years, is that people won't understand it and they'll vote yes. And that is a concern I have about anything we put on the ballot. It seems to me that the default position of voters now is yes and not no. I think that's regrettable. But I think it also speaks to exercising a lot of care on what's put on the ballot. So that's one point that's influencing my decision on all of these things. The other thing is to tell you all that I live in Gainesville. And if you come by my house when I'm working in my yard, you will see overalls and a straw hat.
We appreciate you making that comment. Surely do. Mr.
Interesting comment, Joe, because
Pull the mic there to you,
Microphone.
if you will. Pull the mic to you.
if the people, and I changed my vote, if you remember, because I wanted this issue, it was so important to so many people to come before the people. But if the people are upset and mad and anti-establishment, anti-incumbents, that's a thought that I hadn't really gone through in my mind, that I just assume that people, if they don't understand it, they're going to vote against it. Ben, you brought out a very interesting point.
Let me recognize anybody that hadn't been recognized that wished to be recognized. None? Mr. Grundy.
Vote. Let's vote.
Did you want to?
No, I thought I heard something.
No, I'm going to say something. I really appreciate it. I just learned something new just now. Commissioner Woods brought out something about 1990. A promising about. I think I was 10 years old when that happened during that go around, and it's interesting historically. I remember as a young man looking back then at what demographics were, how lines were being drawn, and I actually remember Lawton Childs when he first got elected. I actually remember that.
I don't think so.
I do. No, I'm sorry.
Not the first time.
I meant, okay, I misspoke. To governor, correct. You're right. Buddy looked at me. It's not 1 a.m., so I can't say it's late. No, but the point of the matter was, I think I recall at that time, too, the transition the state was going through politically, the political lines that were drawn. And there's going to be something coming on the ballot, and I think our attorney will probably even attest to this, for fair districting that's going to be going on the ballot. I have a problem with congressional districts. The two congressional districts, 5 and 6 that they're drawn now, how they're drawn. I mean, gerrymandering is gerrymandering. I just don't want gerrymandering in Alachua County. And with that, let's vote.
Let's vote.
Everybody all done? All through?
All through.
The motion before you then is that Mr. Grundy move the resolution and ballot language on question 6, and that the following question be submitted to the electorate. That shall the 5 members of the Board of County Commissioners of Alachua County be elected to office?
7, Mr. Chairman. Isn't it 7-1?
I'm sorry. 7. Thank you.
7.
Thank you for correcting.
1.
Well, anyway, we've substituted, so 7 if it's 7. Thank you for correcting me. Be elected to the office from single-member districts by electors residing in each of those districts only. That's the question before you. Seeing no other hands up. And I think everybody understands the question. Mary, you calling the roll this time? Thank you very much.
Mr. Ackerman? Mr. Brinkman?
No.
Ms. Ferguson? No. Mr. Glazer? Yes. Mr. Grundy?
No.
Mr. Irby?
Yes.
Mr. Little?
No.
Mr. Obrancy Martin?
No.
Mr. John Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Stringfellow?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
No.
And Mr. York?
Yes.
7 yes and 7 no.
Okay, then by your votes, the motion fails. We appreciate very much. What I really appreciate is the decorum that we've had in this chamber tonight. It has just been outstanding.
Excuse me,
No, no.
excuse me, a point of order. I think there's 15 of us, correct?
14 in attendance.
Is there one missing?
One missing. Yeah.
Mr. Bill Richards is not here.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
The motion
Mr. Richards.
failed.
Mr. Richards.
Motion failed.
I move we adjourn, sine die.
Now, Mr., if I can just take care of a little business we have to take care of.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
We
it.
should follow
Normally,
the
I want to
agenda.
recognize it. If we could get a motion to direct the staff to prepare the report to the board, and then we will file that. It's been moved and seconded. We prepared the staff, and they will then present to the board. Any discussion from the
Mr. Chair.
from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
I'm just wondering when this item comes before the county commission on July 13th, whether it could be a time certain so those of us who may want to be there can attend.
We can ask the manager. I don't know if we need to make a big presentation or not, but
Yeah. I mean,
Mr. Brinkman.
speaking to that point, Commissioner Ferguson, the county commission does not have any leeway. They must vote to put on the items approved by this commission.
I understand that, but I just assumed that there was going to be some type of presentation to the county commission.
May I speak?
Mary.
At the moment, the item is on the consent agenda.
Oh, it is?
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for that. Appreciate that clarification. All right. Then the motion is that we direct staff to file a report and place it on the agenda by the before the commission to pass it on to the supervisor of elections. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Move we adjourn, sine die.
1 second, please. Second. This is something we have to do, Mr.
We got to
Joe.
follow the agenda, don't we? We approve the agenda.
Well, normally that's in order, but we've got to do this, and that is, I need a motion to, unless y'all want to come back, to authorize the chair to approve the expenditures on behalf of this commission to pay the attorney and others. Who moved that?
I did.
All right.
Anybody.
Okay.
Just slow down and let the man do what he got to do.
All right. Mr. Grundy, I'm going to give you credit for moving that. Any discussion on having the chair approve any expenditures? Any from the audience? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries then, and we will review any invoices that we get and present them to the proper authority to pay. Any closing comments by any of the members?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
I don't want to hear from John Martin.
This may be your last. We voted to follow the agenda, and this is an agenda item. And some of you made
This is our last chance.
comments closing. I did not make any closing comments. I made what I was authority. So I want to make a couple of comments.
Very good.
It's part of the agenda. First of all, I want to thank the county commission for appointing all of us, including myself. And I've said in the past meetings that I applaud their courage to appoint a pretty diverse group. May not be as diverse as some would like, but I think when you hear all the varying opinions, it turned out to be a pretty diverse group. I want to thank the staff that supported us, all the information that they gave us, any questions we had, they answered on a timely manner. I want to say something specifically to our attorney, that if the question was, did I appreciate your legal counsel and service, the simple answer would be yes. And those who have been in some other meetings may know what I'm talking about. Yes versus no. I hope that, it is my hope that even if you disagreed with me, you respect my passion and commitment to serve as I respect yours. I hope that my fellow committee members have enjoyed serving with me as much as I've enjoyed serving with them, because it has been a joy. It really has.
We have.
And I want to thank again Mr. Irby for his chairing this meeting and reining some of us in, not me, of course, but some of us. And lastly, I want to thank the people who have participated in this process, both either in the public meetings, through various emails and correspondence and things that I've had on the street. You have reminded me, and I get emotional when I think about this, how lucky I am to not only be in this nation, but this state and this beloved county.
Well said, John.
So I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. Thank you,
John. And Dr. Wall, we just want to thank you again. Well said, John.
Was that so bad?
That was great.
No.
Yes, it was.
When I first read the report from 2000 and reviewed it this week, knowing Dr. Wall was coming here, we'll dust it off in 2020, and he can come back and for the third trip on some of this, because I got a feeling, seeing what's happened before, all this stuff seems to make the big circle and come back around again. But we really appreciate you coming and then staying with us. I'm impressed. But I mentioned this a while ago, and I say this for anybody that's still watching, and that is the decorum that's been in this chamber has been outstanding. The collaboration between the members has been outstanding. It has been a pleasure to work with all of you, and it really has been. And I've spent a lifetime. I think it's time for you to move, Joe. Move.
We adjourn, sine die.
You're getting emotional too, man.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those no.
Yeah. Thank you for my yard.